So you've spent the last 30 days, 60 days quarantining fish, making sure that they are healthy, disease-free before you put them in your main system. You've gone through all that. Now they're ready to go in the main system. Now what do you do? If you want to know, stay tuned. What's going on YouTube? John here. Thank you for joining Blue Carbon Reefing. Today we are going to talk about what I do when I am done quarantining fish and ready to introduce them into my main system. Now if you think about it, you just spent 30 days, 60 days or longer feeding the fish, medicating the fish, observing the fish, doing water changes. What is the best thing that you can do now that it's made it through all that to make sure the fish is going to survive and integrate well with the rest of the community? So I'm going to give you a few tips of what I do. Hopefully anyone watching here, if you're introducing a fish and take anything away from this video, it may help you keep that fish alive or make sure that any other fish that you put into the system have a good chance of surviving, because ultimately that's what we're doing, is trying to make sure we do everything we can for our pets. Now the first thing I do is I make sure that I feed both the main system that the fish are getting introduced to as well as the quarantine system. Most fish aggression is over food, so you want to make sure that everybody has a full belly. So in my eyes, it's going to help reduce the aggression, help reduce the fighting a little bit when you're introducing these new fish. So the next thing you're going to do is you're going to want to match the salinity and temperature. Those are the main two things that you want to make sure you're matching up when you introduce the fish in there, and make sure that they're matching. So the quarantine tank, the temperature was 80 degrees and the salinity was the specific gravity was 1.021, and the reef tank is obviously kept at 1.025. Right now it's 1.025. I'll fluctuate between 1.025 and 1.026. So what I had done is I actually turned down the heater of the quarantine tank at 80 and turned it down a few degrees. So over the course of a few hours, while I was feeding the fish, obviously the temperature would be dropping, hopefully closer to 77 degrees. You're also going to see I'm going to set up a drip acclimation to try to acclimate the salinity difference. I was trying to bring up the salinity by kind of topping off the quarantine system with salt water instead of regular RO water, but obviously I was ready to introduce the fish now as opposed to waiting a couple more weeks. I had already brought up the specific gravity a few 1,000ths of a points, but 1.021 and 1.025 is only 4 1,000ths off. My thought was I'm going to do a drip acclimation and bring it up to somewhere in the middle, and that last 1 or 2 1,000ths of specific gravity, the fish should do just fine, adjusting to that over the course of the next few days or weeks. The next thing I also like to do is I like to introduce the fish towards the end of the day. So the reason I like to do this, just in case there is aggression, what will end up happening is the lights are going to be going out within a half an hour to an hour. Most fish at that point are going to be getting ready to go back to their hiding spots for the night. Most of the fish I have are not nocturnal, so if they only have a half an hour, an hour to to pick on each other before they end up going to sleep, that obviously makes it a little bit less likely, instead of having 8 to 10 hours of the first day that they're introduced together. Also, in my mind, I think that once fish go to sleep, they have a certain hiding spot that they spend most of the time or almost every night in. So if all the other fish that have already been in the tank go to their typical hiding spots, the new fish that gets introduced has to find his own spot. So as long as there's plenty of room for that, you should have less of a problem. Now the next step that I take is I actually will add bacteria. When you are adding new fish to the system, you are increasing the bioload. Sometimes that will lead to an algae spike. So when I add bacteria, I'm going to shut off both protein skimmers, and then I'm going to add the bacteria to this specific area of my system, which actually I just use as rock to collect bacteria. So it's the perfect spot for me to add this. But I'm going to keep the protein skimmers off for a good 12 hours, possibly 24 hours before I turn it back on. In my eyes, the bacteria is only going to help with that extra bioload now that you have new fish added, to make sure you don't have any kind of algae spikes. Okay, so I've added an air stone just to try to oxygenate the water since there's no water movement, and this is probably going to be, I'm going to try to do this over an hour. I don't want to do it super quick. I want obviously the fish to be able to go immediately into the new system and be used to the water conditions, and I'm hoping an hour is long enough to do so. For the most part, everything's the same. I use the same salt. Just the salinity was slightly off and the temperature was slightly off, so I'm hoping with doing this we're going to equalize everything to the main system. So stay tuned. Okay, so I want to check the salinity, see where we are at right now. 1.023. So I'm going to put them in. So I'm going to start first with the fox face and put him in here, and then we're going to go upstairs and we're going to put the sohal in. Now, while I'm catching this fish, a couple things. One, when I put the fish in there, I do not like to use nets. I like to use these specimen containers. The fox face is venomous, so if you get hit by those spines, that will hurt very much, as well as the sohal tang has a blade on the back of his tail, which as well could slice your finger open. So both of these fish, I used a specimen container. I did not want to use a net. As you can see, I used very, very, very little water. I did not want to use any of the water that possibly could still have copper in it to transfer over. I wasn't really too much worried about parasites, but just wanted to make sure if there was any copper left over, residual from the quarantine tank, it did not go in. I also let the fish swim out of the specimen container on their own. I don't try to, dump them out, and if at all possible. So this guy was taking a little coercion, but he eventually came out. Next, what I wanted to say is another thing that I can say is a little tip that I could not do in this case was if you can add multiple fish at once, that normally will help with the aggression. It will kind of help to make sure the aggression isn't focused on one specific fish, but kind of spread it out amongst any other fish that you're adding. So in this case, it was not possible. The fox face I wanted to add downstairs to the frag tank, which the only other fish in there was this yellow tang, which actually when I put him in did not really like the fox face too much. That yellow tang had been in there probably for at least 6 months by himself. And I wanted to add the fox face because the yellow tang was still kind of scared of me. He was hiding all day long, and sometimes when I see fish, they're kind of community. So when there's multiple fish in the tank, they kind of are a little bit more friendly, a little bit less skittish. So that's why I wanted to add this fox face to help keep the frag rack clean and as well just kind of make sure that it's a little bit more of a community downstairs in the frag tank. As well as the sohal, you'll see when I introduce him upstairs. I did not get to introduce him with any other fish, but I was pretty confident that sohal would fit in pretty well. He is pretty aggressive on his own, and he will be my most aggressive fish and probably will become the king of the tank. So I'm going to put the sohal in the main display. Same thing, I'm going to catch him with the specimen container and get rid of as much water as I can so I'm not putting a bunch of the quarantine tank water into the new display. I am also going to put him, if you notice, I normally feed the tank on the middle towards right side of the tank. I'm going to put him on the left side of the tank where it's a little bit darker. One, I'm hoping he finds a good hiding spot quick. Two, I don't want to put him in the same spot that I normally feed the tank. So as you can see on the left side of the tank, the lights are actually going out. So just kind of confirms that I'm at the end of the day. I will say my predictions was that the sohal would be just fine. However, the king of the tank right now is the purple tang for sure. I normally see the purple tang show a little bit of aggression to the other two zebrasomas, the yellow tang and the Desjardins tang. So the naso tang's a peacekeeper. I wasn't too worried about him, but definitely the purple tang. Let's see where he goes. So far, he is doing okay. Nobody's messing with him. I think he's gonna do just fine. If he starts going for food, it's gonna be a really good sign, especially if they let him. There's the purple tang, starting a little bit of aggression. Alright, he's going to get used to his surroundings. So far so good. I think he's doing pretty good. There's less aggression than I expected. Let's take a look. For some reason this Pacific Blue is a little bit more aggressive than I've normally seen. Yeah, the Pacific Blue is bigger than the Sohal. So in terms of size, I think the Pacific Blue and the Naso are pretty close. And then this Sohal is a little bit smaller. Purple Tang's there. Just trying to show him what's up. Oh, he's going for food already. It's a good sign. It's a really good sign, actually. Alright, to be honest, I'm pretty confident with the Sohal right now. We're going to stop filming and we're going to go back downstairs and look at the fox face. So as you can see in the upper right hand corner, the yellow tang was not liking the fox face being added, and he was pretty hard tail slapping him quite a bit. So what I decided to do is I kind of realized I don't really have two separate hiding spots, so that each fish can kind of have their own spot to hide. The yellow tang would either hide under the frag rack like it is now, or it would hide behind that rock structure under the overflow drain. So I ended up adding a second rock structure since I had the room, and my thought was now they each could have their own spot to hide, so they would have some relief. And they wouldn't be kind of hiding right next to each other. So added this rock structure, and in about 24 hours I came back. There's still a little bit of aggression going on. I'm not sure what I'm going to do. The next step I can try to do is I can remove the yellow tang, put him back in quarantine for a few weeks, let the fox face get established, and then try to add the yellow tang back. Or I might end up, removing one of the two fish permanently and doing something else with it. So we'll have to stay tuned on the fox face in the frag tank, but the Sohal is doing very well in the main display. As expected, he is holding his own. He's not really getting picked on. What I'm actually seeing is he's becoming a little bit of the aggressor against a few other fish. The yellow tang specifically, I'm noticing that the yellow tang now has a few little pieces of his rear tail kind of bitten off. So I expect that may happen a little bit. I don't think that anything is going to be permanent. I think that it will calm down. Otherwise, I would be trying to remove fish at this point. So very happy with the Sohal being integrated in. If you guys have any questions, let me know. This is just kind of how I do things. I have introduced a lot of fish. I do maybe have a little bit bigger of a system than the average person. So I do have the luxury of, adding multiple fish, and I have a lot more experience when it comes to, adding fish. And I really like tangs, and tangs are very aggressive fish. So it's a little bit harder to try to get them all to get along. If I was adding a bunch of Anthias or other small fish, of course there would probably be a little bit less things that you have to follow here, but this is what I do. I feel pretty good about the Sohal, fitting into place in the community in the main display. I will come back and update you guys on the, fox face and the yellow tang downstairs in the frag tank. So right now the aggression is still there, and if it doesn't die down over the next, couple days or week, I'm going to obviously take the next steps a little bit further and, do something else. So stay tuned. Again, thank you guys for watching. Again, I hope somebody took something from this video one way or another. Again, you don't have to follow this to, play by play, but, this is obviously what I do when I try to, introduce fish and make sure everybody's doing well. In the frag tank, the fox face did find the second rock structure to hide under. However, the yellow tang, found him and does know that he's there. So the aggression is still going on a little bit. So all in all, I'm happy with everything that's been going on, what I'm seeing with the the fish going into the new system. I'm going to keep an eye on the fox face downstairs. That's really of the two fish that got introduced, the one that I'm most worried about. So we'll keep an eye on it, and we'll update you in the future on what that would look like. So again, hopefully you guys, somebody learned something from this video. If you have any questions, go ahead and leave a comment down below. Hit that like button if you guys enjoyed the video. I will continue to try to bring out more videos. I do have a few updates that I owe you guys, so stay tuned for that. And if this is your first time here and you'd like to see more, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and don't forget to hit that notification bell so you will be notified when I come out with future videos. Thank you guys again for watching, and happy reefing. Catch you in the next one.